Good afternoon. My name is Maria
Heather, please say
Noesti,
something.
and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Cognito. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, Remote Student Orientation, How
You guys hear
Colleges Are
me?
Preparing.
Can
Yes.
you say something, Heather? Because I can't hear you.
Yes.
I can't hear you. Oh, God. Scott, I can't hear Heather.
We can hear you, Dr. Frame. Can you hear me?
All right, I got it.
Perfect. All right. So I want to welcome all of you. Thank you for joining us. And I want to welcome our presenters today. Before we begin today's presentation, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. First, the presentation will be recorded. A copy of the presentation will be sent to you within the next 24 hours. So please do not worry about taking any notes. Next, as an attendee, you are in listen-only mode. However, please use the question box in the GoToWebinar interface to submit your questions. We've dedicated time at the end where our presenters will answer as many questions as possible. Finally, for those of you who are on social media, please connect with us via Twitter, submit questions through that. You can use the hashtag CognitoWebinars. You can also sign up for any upcoming webinars or view our on-demand library by visiting cognito.com/webinars. And as your host, I just want to briefly tell you a little bit about Cognito and who we are before I transition over to our presenters. We are a health simulation company that believes in the power of conversation to really impact social, emotional, and physical health. And we've been working in the higher ed space for over a decade to provide online trainings on the topic of mental health, military cultural competency, and most recently, sexual misconduct prevention. But that's enough about us. I would like to learn a little bit about all of you on the call. So we have a quick poll question that we're going to go ahead and launch. So if you could come back to your screen and share with us, where is your school in the planning process for your upcoming student orientation? We've moved completely online and already going. You're currently transitioning to a virtual orientation format. We're still evaluating our options, have not started, or not sure, perhaps you're not involved in the process. So I'll give you a few seconds to respond, and then I will share the results with the group. I also invite you to use the question box to share with us what are some of your biggest concern for this upcoming orientation period and in the next academic year. So 1 or 2 more seconds. All right, and the results are in. So 49% of you are still evaluating your options. 26% are currently transitioning to a virtual orientation format. 16% have moved completely online. Only 1% have not started, and only 8% are not sure. So we hope for those of you that are still evaluating your options, or for those of you that are currently transitioned, that the content of this presentation will be valuable and you will have some key takeaways for your orientation format. So I now want to introduce our presenters today. We are joined by Dr. Heather White, who is the Associate Vice President and University Dean of Students at the University of Florida. We are also joined by Andre Green, who is a Director of Efferson Student Union Activities and New Student Orientation at Florida A&M University. And finally, we're also joined by Dr. Adrian Frame, who is the Associate Vice President and Dean of Students at the University of Central Florida. I want to welcome each of them, and I will now hand it over to Dr. White, who will get us started. Please take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with you today to talk about preview and our orientation, which we call preview at the University of Florida, and really the changes that we've made amidst COVID-19. Yeah, first slide. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of context, because we all are in the state of Florida, but we are different in ways that I think you'll pick up on today. So context about the University of Florida orientation, which I'll just call it preview from here going forward. It is typically a 2-day residential pretty much event for our freshman admits and 1 day for our transfer admits. This has been in place for I don't know how many years, decades at this point, of this fashion. There has been no online preview or orientation for these communities prior to now. We are actually in the first day of our summer B and fall admits orientation, and we had our first transfer session last week. So I tell you that to tell you that this was an effort that was pulled off very quickly at UF. Because of what was happening really with the virus. So we had about 6 weeks. We made the decision about at that point, could see the direction that things were going into, and made the decision to go completely online because of the volume that we are working with in our students, and we needed to either be online completely or be in face-to-face, and so we made that decision about 6 weeks ago. So that is a quick turnaround time to build a completely online program. And as you can imagine, we had it, when you've done it this long one way, it's a well-oiled machine by that point, down to the minute, knowing exactly kind of everything that's going to happen. So this summer is very different for us. And usually you have about 9 months or a year to build an online platform and format to do it well. And we had 6 weeks. So that is where we are. I can't stress enough to you in this our partnerships around campus and getting this done and pulled off. So from those in the Division of Student Affairs and helping us with videos and recordings to our technology folks on campus, that is really why this has been successful, that we think it's going to be successful right now, is because of, again, all of those partners. And the reason is because Preview is such a it's such an iconic thing on our campus. To be a orientation leader, a Preview staffer is a highly sought out position on campus as a leader. Preview is the one thing I would say, or one of the things at UF that all students go through. It's that commonality, that common bond that people, no matter who you are and where you're from, you can have those conversations. Everybody's gone through Preview and talking about that experience. So it's very important to the institution and hopefully helping our students transition in well. So, and thinking about our focus for Preview and the orientation, really in terms of learning outcomes, we focus on UF academics, building a sense of community amongst our students and faculty and staff, recognizing the importance of resources and offices and making sure students understand those coming in, because this is a very large institution, and then navigating that financial transition, and hopefully that students will be comfortable with that throughout their time, not just their first year, but throughout their time. We do an assessment at Preview, and for our 2019, our assessment results show that 97% of freshmen who attended Preview agreed or strongly agreed with the statement, "As a result of attending Preview, I feel better about my decision to attend UF." So again, this is the tradition that the event is coming from, and the solid foundation that we feel like it builds amongst our students here. Next slide. So when you think about our students, so this gives you a snapshot in terms of volume and numbers, and just kind of walking you through the process a little bit is, so our students in the traditional residential format sign up. That's 2 days for incoming for freshmen and 1 day for transfer, and they pick their dates. They select their preferences and then are assigned dates. So we've kept that same format for the online program, so they select the dates that they want to attend. Even though a good bit of this is self-paced, but there are pieces of it that are not, that have to be coordinated, and that is the reason for keeping it in that format. So we have small group meetings and one-on-one academic advising. I would say this is one of the unique things about the University of Florida is we have one-on-one academic advising. Every student gets a one-on-one academic advising appointment and helping them select their classes for the fall semester or summer B or fall semester. And we've done some benchmarking around the country, and we know that that is a unique feature to our process and something that our students give a lot of positive feedback about. In terms of engagement, we really wanted, because it is such an engaging residential event, we want to make sure that happens in an online format. And so there are pieces, of course, built in for, there's a self-paced, the modules, the things that the students go through, but there are the small group meetings and one-on-one academic advising that's happening virtually via Zoom. So that is interactive, again, through Zoom. We know there's been a lot of Zoom. We are on Zoom meetings, I think all of us on presenting on hour to hour right now. So that is a way of engagement, and then using of course, our orientation leaders to help in that. We've planned 5 modules, which is the same content that we would deliver face-to-face, just in a virtual format. So the first one is focused on academics. Again, about 55% of preview content is focused on academics for students, and about 35% of that for families is focused on academics, just to kind of show you how that falls percentage-wise. So the UF academics, so the students are going through this module and thinking about their incoming credits, what does that mean, state core requirements, and exploring academic major opportunities. So that is module 1. For the first 3 modules that I'll talk about briefly, these are released to the students 2 weeks prior to their session. So they start reviewing and going through this information. We encourage it 2 weeks prior to the session that they are assigned to. Module 2 is planning the first semester, so that really focuses on critical tracking courses, identifying general ed requirements, and determining any appropriate placement for UF courses. So this is what they're going through in that module. Again, this in both of these, the academics and the planning the first semester, about 1 to 2 hours, give or take, and again, self-paced. Then we move into Gator 101 module, and that's where the students start kind of putting together module 1 and 2 into an initial course scheduling worksheet. So we're wanting them to bring this together because this is all about registering for classes and getting them set up in their academic plan of study. So they're summarizing all that information, outlining what they'd want to build for their first semester, identifying health and safety resources, financial resources, those kinds of things. So again, all those 2 weeks prior to their first session, about 1 hour to 2 hours that it would take them self-paced. And then we move into session 4, and that is the preview small groups. So they are meeting, the students are meeting with their preview advisor and their orientation leader, which is called a preview staffer, in small groups, in addition to having their one-on-one advising appointment. So for the incoming freshmen, day 1 of their preview session will be about 60 to 90 minutes in small group with the advisor and staffer to review course schedule development and logistics for their 30-minute one-on-one advising appointment, which will be on day 2. And then they have about 30 to 45 minutes of small group time to ask specific questions about transitioning into UF. So that's the engagement piece, that interaction. A lot of that's with the preview advisors or the orientation leaders, and the orientation leaders play a significant role in our process. I'm sure all of our processes. And then the last module is on campus connections, and that's where you're thinking about housing, career, disability resource center, multicultural and diversity affairs, student activities and involvement, all those different kinds of things and ways to get involved and things that they just need to know. So that's going through in module 5. We have a preview app, so they're still using that they traditionally would use, and that's the guidebook. And there's a quiz after each module that they have to pass for the next module to be unlocked. And so we built it that way, so hopefully they're retaining some of this information. And then our orientation leaders, I cannot tell you enough and impress upon you enough the role that they play. We have 46 orientation leaders, and they are, I'm biased, but they are unbelievably amazing. I got to hang out with them on a Zoom call Monday, all 46 of them, and 15 minutes, and I was like, my energy was shooting through the roof after that. I need them every day to talk to them. They're so amazing. They all stayed on. This was not the job they anticipated, but they all stayed on. We had hired 46, and they all stayed on to work with us. And they're very involved in those small group activities and helping with the preview advisors and helping the students get their courses, in addition to learning all the resources and those kinds of things. So just amazing students that I can't tell you enough about. And that the role that they play, that peer-to-peer role with our incoming students, is so vastly important. Last slide. Our families. So what, our students, what about our families? Well, our families we know are important to our student success. They have traditionally been involved in preview. Here they have a separate section in our separate schedule in the 2 days, for a freshman schedule. They are separated most of the time from their students and going through their own content. So we've done the same thing that we did for students that we built in the Canvas shell. In our enrollment management system, we built shells for families as well. So they're going through a lot of similar content, but just different and specific for them. So during a traditional summer, family attendance, a preview averages approximately a 1:1 student to family ratio. So that tells you the engagement level there. And they want to know, of course, as much information as they can get too. And so in their Canvas shells, their content is focused around academics, student financial affairs, housing, and business services, which is a lot of the dining, the Gator One cards, those kinds of things. So those are the most popular topics that we have picked up through them over the course of the years. And so we built a shell, of course, around those things. And so for a freshman family on day one, they have a live session for families on the Canvas shell where they go through an overview of what will be provided. And they have an opportunity to submit questions. And then on day two, they have 3 different live presentations, a Q&A session, a panel with the preview staffers to get that student perspective, and then what we call a panel with the pros, which is a panel of people like me that work in student affairs and across the university who are focused on, which we all are here, student success, and being able to ask us questions from our vantage point and viewpoint. And that's a very, very popular session in the face-to-face that we're just turning into a virtual option for our families. So again, critical as well for the families to have as much information as we can. We also maintain, as many of you may, Facebook groups based on the year of graduation for the students. So our area, so this all falls under new student and family programs in the Dean of Students office. And we maintain those Facebook groups. So we have those going to answer questions. We have email addresses that have been in place a long time, as well as the app to make sure that people are as engaged as they possibly can. And we are being very responsive to try to transition our new Gators and their families into the University of Florida.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Andre Green, and I am the Director of the Evanston Student Union Activities and New Student Orientation at Florida A&M University. I've been doing orientation here for about 14 years, and I did 2 years as an orientation leader at Florida State. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about our traditional format where we used to do orientation for 2.5 days for freshmen and 1 day for transfers. And then March hit, COVID-19, and then we had to come up with a new, unique way to do orientation here at Florida A&M University. We typically service about 1,500 incoming freshmen and about 600 transfer students. And so many of you probably think about how am I going to go about it. And so I wanted to go from that aspect of it and tell you a little bit about, make sure that you utilize your experts. All right, every year we do surveys that we go out and we mostly get information back from our family members. Our students usually rush through it. And so what we did decide to do is to set our orientation leaders down that are current, as well as our student staff. And we want to know what perception they have of orientation. What do they think was the most important things that students need to know? And so from that, we developed our flow of our information that we want to give to our incoming students virtually. All right. And we know that they're getting a lot of information overload from the fact that admissions is reaching out to them, we're reaching out to them, financial aid. And so we want to make sure that we were precise and concise on how we give them information about from orientation. And so we did some online points of contact. We started some meet and greets. So we got the information from our admissions office. Then we emailed those students and invited them to a Zoom meeting to talk about things pre-orientation. And so things that leading up to like turning your immunizations records, make sure that you're paying your admissions deposit, things of that nature. So that we did a pre-orientation Zoom meeting to all of our admitted students, and then we welcome them to come on. All right, and now our own next part is the actual orientation program. And so when we decided to do a 2-pronged approach, one is that we're doing a Zoom meeting for an hour and 30 minutes. Then the second approach is that we're using our Blackboard, or some schools may have Canvas. And in that Blackboard, we have 4 modules, one about academics, and the other one paying for college, student support services, and then campus life/involvement. All right, and so one of the things that we wanted to make sure that you all consider is to make sure that you add the elements of incitement, because once again, there's a lot of information that is going out to these students. And so a part of our Zoom meetings is that we decided we do interactive and Kahoots, But one of the things that we want to make sure that the students felt connected and engaged at the institution. So we teach 3 orientation leaders lead the Zoom meeting. It's broken down in 3 different parts. But as we transition over, we do chants, like things that we have here at Florida A&M University, as well as we do TikToks. That's new things that out. And so we have strolls that every incoming freshman class will kind of create. And so we've already developed those TikToks, and during our Zoom meetings, we show that TikTok, and then they can go back to the orientation Instagram as well as our Facebook and orientation website to view those TikToks and kind of connect them to the institution. Also during our Zoom meetings, we do different challenges and giveaways. So when they're actually coming back on campus for this upcoming year, they have an opportunity to sit down and have lunch with the VP, not on campus, but somewhere within Tallahassee. All right, or have a lunch with the SGA president and vice president to make them to connect with the student body. And then we also have a Mr. and Miss, which y'all probably have a homecoming king and queen, but we have that throughout the year. One of the new things too is that we have homecoming, and that falls in my office, and so we get to give the students an actual ticket. So every student gets to go to the homecoming events for free. But if they have a guest, we're giving them a ticket so they can come to the thing if they answer the questions and stuff during the Zoom meeting. So make sure that you do some elements of excitement when you're doing that, because it is, once again, information overload throughout this whole process. All right. And then that leads us into utilizing your resources. We had already been in conversation with a third-party vendor, Advantage Design Group, to develop an online orientation that complements our in-person orientation. And so that part wasn't going to be up and running until September. So we had to come up with, what do we have in place right now to actually do virtual orientation? And so we leveraged our technology. We use our Blackboard and Zoom meetings. And so we worked with Blackboard to create those different modules into that system. And once again, sort of like UF, once you complete the academics, then you take a quiz and you move to your plan for college, you take a quiz and you move forward. And in each one of those quizzes, the student has to make an 80% of better. And then that will then let them meet with their academic advisor virtually. All right. And so Heather talked about don't forget the family members, and we too scheduled meetings with our family members to make them feel a part of this whole process. But my thing is, you want to make sure that you start where you are. Use what you have and do what you can. I mean, resources are very limited during this time, and so utilize what you have around campus. All right. And then that then goes into our last thing, but you want to talk about, make sure that you follow up. They have completed the orientation modules, they have done the Zoom meetings, they registered for classes. And so one of the things that we want to make sure that we have the orientation leaders reach back out to them, all right? And say, okay, do you have any more questions before you proceed and actually start doing the summer semester or doing the fall? One of the things that we're also doing is that our office handles Welcome Week. And so we know that social distancing is going to be in play. And so we also have that 1,500, and we broke them up into groups of 10 that orientation leaders can meet with them throughout the first semester to kind of do that, take them on a campus tour, some things that they would actually do during orientation, introduce them to the different buildings, take them to lunch, do different things, take them bowling. So we're doing that, and so that's very important that you follow up with those students after they've completed the virtual orientation, because we want to make sure that they know that they're a part of our campus. And that's basically it. And that's how we're doing our virtual orientation for this upcoming summer.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Adrienne Frame. I'm from the University of Central Florida. I serve as Associate Vice President and Dean of Students, and orientation first year experience is in my portfolio, and it's my pleasure to provide you with an overview of our plan for our online content. So as a quick overview of UCF, we have 68,000 students, so we're not small. We do orientation for all 3 of our semesters. So we have orientation for fall, for summer, and for spring, and offer an orientation content for each of those terms. Several of my colleagues have also made reference during their conversations with you about Summer B. Our first time in college students, FTICs here in the state of Florida, many of them start in the 3rd weekish of June. as in their college experience. And then we have another group that comes and starts in the fall. So many of us, each of us is scheduling some time for those FTICs that are starting in summer B term, as well as those that are starting in the fall term. We have 7,000 FTICs that go through our orientation process, about 10,000 transfer students annually. That's for our summer fall program, and for our spring program, you see those 3,600 transfer students for the spring and about 400 FTICs. So the bulk of our FTICs do start in that fall summer time frame. We have about 15,000 families and 15,000 family members that also come during orientation, which for us is actually offered in two different ways. We have about 35 orientation leaders that we generally have each year, and O-teamers here do enroll in a 2-credit course the semester prior to their service. So throughout the spring semester, they've been involved in a credit-bearing course to prepare them for their role. As Dr. White has already indicated, our O-teamers have all joined kind of came on board with an expectation. We share that our O-teamers are also a very highly sought after position, and they had some expectations about what this might look like, and it has certainly changed. One of the things that is a little bit different about UCF is that we had already in place, our transfer students did have an online option for their content. So we had some existent content that we've been working with for a couple of years for online content for transfer students. They would still come to campus to do in-person advising, but they would have, we had an existent shell of content for transfer students. We also had a plan early on in the fall that we would be doing an online component for FTICs as well, that we would build off of that. So what we really had to put together carefully was in partnership with the colleges. The colleges do their own academic advising and advising content, and that was the part that we really had to move very, very quickly to get in place to prepare for orientation this year. So we too had a 2-day process or an online process. So we were preparing already for both of those things. Now we are entirely online for everybody. That first, so that before people come for orientation, we too have a module-based online content, 7 modules that cover much of the similar content that's already been explained to you in previous presentations here. We're really talking about what can you expect from orientation? How can you best use this time to your benefit? How can you get engaged? What are the various kinds of resources that we have on campus? What is the academic experience likely to be? How do you continue to pay for college? What are the financial implications of college? All of those content pieces are in our 7 modules. We did a specific module that I'll talk a little bit about at the end, where we really wanted to focus on students that we expected, because many of our students are coming for summer, and we know that that is in the state of Florida, we're all in a remote learning paradigm right now for summer B, that we really wanted to do some targeted learning through the orientation modules on how to start online. This is a different footprint than our own students expected to have coming to college in summer B. And so we wanted to give them some targeted strategies on how to start successfully online. That content needs to be done prior to orientation. It actually opens, I think it just opened for the FTICs, and our first FTIC orientation is next week, as I think is the same for FAMU. And I think, Heather, you said today was your magic day. So we're all learning a lot, and we should probably talk about volume of communication on day of, because that has probably been a surprise certainly it has been for us, even though everything is online. The same kinds of questions that you would have gotten in face-to-face are still going to come at the same volume. So how are you going to manage that? So pre-orientation, they're doing that resource content, as well as some academic advising, specific content to prepare for the academic advising piece that will happen online when they're going through orientation on their actual day. On the day of orientation, the student completes their virtual orientation session. Much of that content is also provided specifically by the colleges. They participate in schedule planning and advising. Students will enroll in their courses, and they'll also participate in our Pegasus ePreview events. Those are opportunities via Zoom we have a virtual resource fair that we're doing through Zoom. You can go into a Zoom, there are 2 sessions each day. Students can go in and see the various resources, events, offices they may wish to connect with. There will be representatives of each of those offices sitting in Zoom rooms, and we can very quickly triage those folks to the room that they're looking for to get to those virtual, that virtual career fair, virtual resource fair option that we have. We also have small groups offered by O-Teamers. Throughout this process, we are doing our best to launch a new well-being curriculum for student affairs and student development enrollment services at UCF, and they are really going to be focusing on our content about well-being, helping students identify their purpose, helping students with resiliency, engagement, harm reduction, financial literacy, and cultural consciousness. Those are some of the main content pieces that our orientation leaders will really be discussing with students in both their online content and in those face-to-face meetings that will happen via Zoom on the day of. There's also a Q&A session as part of that Pegasus preview. That Q&A session, similar to what other people have said, very popular and is part of our O-Teamers are the ones that provide that. It's really helpful for folks to get a sense of what individual students are saying and what student input is about their life. And Zoom helpline. We have a Zoom helpline that is on the whole time that the orientation is happening. It runs from 11:30 to 4 each day, so that we can be right there with questions ready to go and quickly respond to people that may need to know where they're going, where they should be at a particular time. Transfer students have a live web course in place, as we said. That was already a part of our process, and we needed to work on the academic advising part. Individual colleges have provided their own content. Our content ranges from PowerPoint presentations to PowerPoints that may be voiceovers to actual video to small groups. So we have a number of the colleges are doing this in different ways that best meets the needs of their particular student population, and we've made accommodations. Again, those partnerships being key, because that was the part that we had to really quickly move to a different kind of format. We had the online content for resources, but we didn't have it for the advising session as much. The web course for university resource content was built, and we really just need to get that advising content up and ready to go. Next slide. So we too have a virtual guest program. We have about 2,700 family members that have registered so far for our online content for families. We launched an initial meeting, which was kind of an overview of the family content, which will roll out throughout the summer. We had about 675 people on that initial meeting, learning how they could help their student, learning what to expect over the course of the summer. We do three sessions a week of this content, and each of them are recorded through Zoom. So if a parent or a family member has missed a particular piece of content, they can go back through the recorded pieces and share that content, understand what that content was that was provided. Many of those are presentations by campus partners that would be similar to ones that we would have done had they been in place with us. Particularly things like how to support your student. What does it mean to go to college? What does FERPA mean for parents? Which is an important one. How can you best support your student? Moving parents out of the kind of high school mentality of being over their student all the time to how do they then move to the place of coach, support, what does that look like, how do they work with, and what resources are available that they can then help refer their students to say, have you gone to see this office, have you gone to see that office? I learned in this presentation that these kinds of services and opportunities are available to you, have you sought that out? It really does mirror to some extent the content that their students are getting as well, so that they can feel like they're getting similar information. And we do give some pointers throughout that of parents, here's a question you may want to ask your student when it comes to these kinds of things, to build that coach mentality versus that parent sort of K through 12 mentality of really being in the mix all the time. I think that's particularly important, quite frankly, right now, as parents of these students, particularly for traditional FTICs, have been in the role of actual instructor for some period of time. They've been even more into their students' work, perhaps, than they ever have been before. And so really helping parents understand or remember what the coaching piece looks like and how to help separate themselves from that. We are sending them each a handbook and a calendar, and that will go in via snail mail to each family. One of the things that we really wanted to focus on, that we were encouraged to focus on, is to really help our students understand what they could expect. How could they start planning their life in terms of remote instruction? What did that mean for remote instruction? What were the different kinds of skills that they may need? What were the different ways that they could structure their day? And while several of them certainly were thrust into remote instruction following spring break and in March at some point, a number of them have kind of fallen through that process versus done it intentionally. In this way, at least for our summer B students, we know our students are going to start online. And so how can we provide some scaffolding, some ideas of ways that they can make that transition more effectively when they thought they would have the classroom, a more traditional classroom experience when they signed on to come to UCF. So we are really trying to make sure we help them identify what's your daily routine, how do you find that distraction-free zone, what are the resources, and how do you access them from UCF once you're enrolled. Again, the FERPA protections on their side, what does it mean? Because they're going to be responsible for the content in their courses. The syllabus will be up, and how do they work with that? But what are the other supports that we can provide to students as they move forward? I think when we have a great website about all of our coronavirus content, and we have a Keep Working, Keep Learning website. And this was a way, rather than having it buried in an FAQ or buried in a website that's been building and building all of this time, this was a way to pull this content forward and more specifically encapsulate it for students to be able to use right away, to really think about how do they want to do this, who are the other resources that they need, how do you connect with people to get the supports that you need, because we really do have so many of them. So many of my colleagues have already said that the partnerships have been key through this to really help them get in front of your families. That those family sessions that we're doing are definitely in partnership with OTeam, as well as the professionals that provide particular services, whether that's student support services, counseling and psychological services, health, financial aid. All of the ways that we come around students to help them and scaffold them towards success are important parts of those family sessions and of the student sessions, and to talk about what that means in a remote environment versus just a face-to-face one. So really thinking about how are your students going to learn, what are the resources that they need, and how do you put that in a convenient place for them to learn. All of our content, all of our web course content is going to be available to the students well after they're done with the module. So they'll always have access. We too have quizzes throughout the thing to make sure that they are learning what we want them to, but they also can always go back to it. It will sit in their web courses cache to be able to go back and look at what was that resource, how did I find that, what was that content, so that they can access it when they need it, which I think is important. One of the things that I shared was the importance of remembering that whatever question you've ever gotten as part of a regular face-to-face orientation process, you are going to get even though it's online. Our first transfer orientation, we had 1,900 emails in a single day. You need to think about what that means about your OTeam or whoever is the people that are going to help you with those FAQs. And FAQ is critical. Also, making sure your O-teamers and whoever's answering those Zoom calls or sitting in your Zoom Q&A or answering those emails, make sure that you've got those messages clear and that communication clear, because you'll be moving really, really fast. And in some cases, very individually. People are asking, where am I supposed to be right now? What is this content? How do I access that? All of those pieces need to happen and relatively quickly. It's also made us look a little bit at the time frame that we have been used to doing this. So we've often looked at an orientation day as kind of maybe a 6 o'clock start for an O-teamer that goes throughout the end of the day. What we're finding is that we may have to look at even going into the evening, doing some shift work, to have a group that's going to come in for a particular period of time and then a group that comes in later and goes later, to be able to answer emails that come in prior to orientation. And so we have a little bit less in the cache when we get to the office on day up. So we are in the midst right now of kind of trying to find that balance, but just be prepared for the volume, and of course, it depends on your institution size too, but the volume of content that you're going to get and how you're going to respond to that carefully and quickly so that people get what they need during your online process. Just because it's online doesn't mean the questions aren't going to come just as frequently as they would if you were face-to-face.
Amazing. I want to thank all three of you, Dr. Frame, Andre, and Dr. White, for sharing with us how they're looking to do their virtual orientation. We were now going to move to the Q&A portion of today's presentation. So I invite everybody to submit questions. We have a couple already in the queue. I also want to remind everyone that we are going to be sending the recording to you all and the slides so that you have access to that and can reference everything that's been shared with us today. The first question, and I'll start with you, Dr. Frame, talks about how did you decide which information was served live through a Zoom call versus self-paced format through videos or PDFs? Can you share? And I invite the rest of the presenters to also add their commentary as well.
So I wouldn't say that those are separate things. I would say that there's likely to be an overlap in both of those places, so that there's content that students can go to in their web course that covers a number of those resources, and that we would reiterate that through much of that face-to-face. There are, as we all know, each of our presentations that are done face-to-face have a little bit of a different timbre, have a little bit of a different piece that goes into it. And so those face-to-face conversations through Zoom now do often provide a little bit of a different anecdote, a little bit of a different spin, or somehow they hit people differently than if they listened to it, read it, etc., through a PowerPoint or another a voiceover or video. So I think you won't see that we've separated that content. We've simply reiterated and hopefully strengthened the retention of that information by presenting it both in a written format or in a encapsulated web course format, as well as in that face-to-face format with those Zoom meetings and those interactives.
And so one thing that we did at FAMU, we let our student staff kind of help us and guide us in what we needed to actually talk about in those Zoom meetings, and then what we actually put within the Blackboard course.
Awesome, thank you, thank you. And so the next question has come up a couple of times, and I'll open it again to the group to provide feedback. Is how do you support families with limited technological skills or resources? Dr. White, do you want to start us off?
Sure. All of the information that we're covering in the Canvas shells and the modules for the students or the families, we can get that to them in another format. So as I think Dr. Frame was saying, that this information is always accessible to students. So the same thing applies with families if there are issues with logging onto the system or technology or those things in general. So we can get that to them in a variety of ways. We would work with the families on a one-on-one basis of what is the best means of getting that to them, in addition to walking them through that. So not just giving the information, but sharing it and making sure that questions are answered and that needs are met that way. And that may be different for each family. So we would try to customize that as much as we possibly could. So if that was mailing them the packets of information and then going through that, letting them digest it and then going through with questions, we would absolutely do those things. So again, very individualized and whatever we would need to help the families and make sure that they're comfortable with that transition.
Great.
I think that I completely agree with what Dr. White just shared, and I would say that the classic struggle that we're in right now with everyone being or many people being in an online place, and I saw about 50% of our participants today haven't yet decided, is orientation is in its purest form a pretty high touch thing. It's relationship building, it's personal. It has a face-to-face component that we all have really come to understand as that's what it is. And that's what we look forward to, sharing the energy and growing the relationship and community, that it's key to providing for students that are coming to us, to help them know you made a great choice and so did we. And we can't wait for you to be here and we were expecting you. Those are all of the feels we want people to get from orientation, and how do you help all of those things still happen in a high-tech environment? So it's high touch done high tech, and that means that you need to be prepared for those individual interactions that would make it feel much more high touch than distant.
Great. And I would say that when folks answer the poll, a lot of folks share that their biggest concern is building connections among students in a virtual environment. So I think that speaks to what you just shared. Andre, I have a question for you. A lot of folks want to know about the modules that you mentioned, the 4 to 5 modules that you talked about, and also about how which platform are you using? Is that through Canvas? Is that through Advantage Orientation? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
All right, so two different things. We were already working with Advantage Design Group to come up with our online component for our students that was going to complement our in-person. So that process we're still working on. That won't be available until September. So we had to use what we had, which was the Blackboard course. And so I had them to create a course for us. And so what we've asked all of our different departments to come up with a video / PowerPoint presentation, and we uploaded those in there. And we also asked our departments to come up with 3 to 5 questions that they want every incoming freshman and transfer to be able to answer by the time that they finish each module. And so that's what we broke it up, and then once again into those different 4: the academics, the paying for college, the student support services, and then the campus life and involvement. And so that's how we kind of structured our Blackboard course. It was something that we did over about 2 or 3 weeks within the time to make sure that we were up and running, and so that our orientation leaders can test it out, because we want to make sure that it was very student friendly and that an actual student can comprehend what was in those modules.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Another question that has come up a few times is, how are you evaluating engagement of your student orientation? And second to that is, are you offering any makeup sessions for those folks that are unable to attend the virtual orientations during the scheduled times? And Andre, do you want to kick us off with how you're doing that for your group?
All right, so currently there are 4 orientation sessions that are out there for our summer B students, and then we did cap them off. And so if we need to go back, so if a student says they can't do it during that time frame, then obviously we'll come up and we're gonna, we try to complete everything earlier. So all of our summer B students will be done by June 9th, and we're knowing that classes don't actually start until June the 22nd. So if we need to come up and do a makeup session or an overflow session, we have the opportunity to do that because we have 2 weeks prior to the summer session. So yes, we will create another session if need be.
Great. And so because we are at the hour, I want to invite each of our presenters to just give us some closing thoughts or any advice for those of the group, the 49% who are still evaluating their options. Dr. Frame, would you like to start us off with any closing advice or thoughts for our folks here?
Sure. My first comment is massive breath first. This is not necessarily what we expected, but we are problem solvers and solution generators. And so given the circumstances that we have, we are working as best we can to continue to purport and share our values for what is important in our institutions and help people feel welcomed, valued, important, and expected. That building community can still happen. And quite frankly, in my experience with our students, while my 50-year-old self is not really that excited about Zoom meetings, they feel very connected when we do. And so when I've had a chance to talk to our O-teamers, and I actually have a meeting with them tomorrow, thank goodness, I need the energy tomorrow, they are very engaged with each other. They are very connected. So while Zoom may not be my thing as much, because I would rather be in the meeting, in the room with them, sharing in that energy, they are very much connected. So we need to be ready to go with that. Give yourself patience, give yourself time, put together a program that shows who you are, shows what you care about, shows that your students are important, and keeps their learning at the center. And I don't think you can fail. Breathe. This is a unique situation, and as a result, I think people give people grace because everyone knows we're doing the very best we can. So I hope that you have great successes, which with whatever decisions you make. Safety first for everybody. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Andre, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, so I sort of go with Dr. Frame. Eat the elephant one bite at a time, all right? One bite at a time so you can get there, as well as make sure that you utilize your experts, utilize your orientation leaders. They will help you guide this process. And then actually students will connect with them a little bit better than us older people as administrators. So make sure that, once again, eat the elephant one bite at a time and utilize your experts, your students.
Beautiful. And Dr. White, take us home.
I echo what both of our experts have said here, and would just top that off with relationships. Yeah, I think we've all hit on that. You know, you're not in this alone, and I believe that's the message we've heard throughout this COVID-19. We're all in this together, right? Capitalize on that, because we are all in this together, and it is not what we planned. We pivoted quickly, and it's okay if you haven't yet. Just figure out, you know, where you are, what will be best for you all and your students in your university. But you have people in your institution who are experts in their area that can help in whatever decision and moving this forward. And so so utilize those partnerships. You don't have to do this by yourself. And then your orientation leaders, your students in this space really are the key. They always are the key, and online changes that in no way. And I think it only elevates it, actually. And so make sure you give them love. Make sure, you know, when we were on our Zoom call Monday, we did a virtual hug like that, because they are key in all of this. So wish you all the best. If there is anything that we can provide, I think I can speak for my colleagues here. Please reach out.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I want to thank you all for joining us today and for sharing with us and passing on some helpful advice for all of the folks that joined today. I want to thank our attendees for spending the last 15 minutes with us. I wish you the best in your orientation journey. Good luck, stay safe, stay healthy, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next webinar. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Can you hear?